I'll be honest, Rob, it's changed in my perspective. I did Jalen's pro day at Oklahoma, and I was there, and there were plenty of NFL people that attended that pro day that were like, I mean, not wowed at the pro day by any means. And there were plenty of guys I talked to that were like, quarterback evaluators that I trust in the league were like, I don't see it. I don't see it. The people in the Eagles building, I don't know if they're blinded by the way Jalen carries himself or they're genuinely seeing it, but I'd like your guys' opinion. I think they wholeheartedly believe he has the ability to be the guy.
All right, we spoke to our next guest. It was just before he was actually in town covering the Eagles that week leading up to the draft. So it's been a minute since we talked to him, but he does an amazing job for the NFL Network. You follow him on Twitter as well, at James Palmer TV. We welcome back to the program James Palmer. What's happening, James?
What's up, guys?
What's up, fella?
How you doing, D-Gun?
Living a dream, bro.
Barry, how you doing? I'm good, guys. I'm just like, this is my last week of like doing what I like to do. And then it all ends, on Sunday. So
where are you going to be stationed? What are you?
I'm hosting a week of Good Morning Football.
Nice.
Starting Monday through Friday of next week. And then I'll come back home, and then who knows? They haven't even told me where I'm starting yet. I'm assuming in Denver I'll start with Russ, and I'll be here with the Broncos because they've been irrelevant since Peyton Manning retired. And I've known that very well when I look at my Marriott points and my miles United, because I don't spend much time here. So I might start off with them, but I usually hit, guys, probably 10, 12 camps throughout training camp. This is probably my favorite time of the year. Like I love going camp to camp. I love the access, watching everything. They are very generous with us at NFL Network that I can kind of go a lot of places on the field with some teams, which is nice. And obviously nobody's hiding a whole lot because they all think they're going to win, and nobody's lost a game yet. So it's a great time to talk to people and get a little bit of what's battles are coming, what they really think about this past offseason and what they want to accomplish in camp. I love camp. It's probably my favorite time of the year outside of the postseason.
Dude, how many frequent flyer miles do you get a year?
I got a lot. I know I'm somewhere. I mean, miles vary, D-Gun, because I could do. It's weird. Like the year that Brady went to Tampa, I was going back and forth to Tampa like crazy, and that's a long stretch. That other year when Mahomes is on fire for his MVP year, I'm like, man, this stinks. Kansas City is like right next door. I'm not getting the miles I want. But
going back down.
Yeah, so like I'm usually around like 120, 130 Marriott nights a year, somewhere in that range. So the wife loves it with that direct to Kawhi from Denver. So
there you go.
Take advantage.
Hey, before we get to football, I got to ask you the most important question we will ask you in this segment. You've been to St. Louis before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, obviously you've been to Kansas City.
Oh yeah.
Which ribs are better, Kansas City or St. Louis?
I'm gonna say this is a tough one, because I like I used to live in Houston, so and I used to live in Atlanta, so my barbecue taste buds are pretty decent. Everybody does something decent. Like nobody should mess with Texas brisket. Like that's alone on itself.
That's right.
I'll take that. I'll say that. You're right about that.
I think that's what they do better than anybody else. I think Kansas City barbecue is a little overrated. Personally.
What?
Okay.
What?
D-Con is upset now.
Get him off the show right now. Get him off the show.
Hello, might help you.
So you would go slightly into St. Louis over Kansas City?
Slightly, but also I would say, I know better hole-in-the-wall spots in Kansas City than I do St. Louis because I've been there so much. Okay. So I think like Q39 doesn't get enough love in Kansas City.
I agree 100%.
I also agree with that.
That's
Gates
a really,
is the best.
really good spot. Yeah.
Hello, might help you. As soon as you walk in, it's a long line. They still, as soon as you walk in, hello, might help you. There's 1,000 people in line.
Yeah.
I remember this. This is a total name drop, but it's hilarious. I was eating at Q39 with Willie McGinnis and Steve Smith. The three of us are out to dinner before a playoff game, and people obviously want to keep coming up to guys. And Steve can be a bit.
Right.
He's not the guy when he's in mid-bite, I'm going to be interrupting.
That's the thing. Somebody comes up and puts their hand on Steve's back. Ooh. Steve, a huge fan. I'd love a picture. He was just like mid-bite was like,
Yeah, no, that's not the
Leave
guy.
me alone.
Yeah.
And I was like, Steve, that's Steve, and Steve loves the food here at Q39.
Yes.
So do not interrupt. Yeah.
He is a non-mess with dude, Steve
big
Smith.
time.
Yeah.
That
Big
is
time.
for sure.
He's great on TV.
Well, James, look, so we got a chance to talk to you about some of the things the Eagles were doing, what we thought they may do in the draft. You talked about Jordan Davis, I remember quite a bit when we talked to you.
Yep.
You know, you look at it now in total, Hassan Reddick, AJ Brown, Kazir White, the draft picks, you know, throwing James Bradbury into that mix. What's your sense of what just kind of the overall what they did this offseason?
I think this is one of the better off seasons in football. And I think we put too much emphasis, guys, on the first portion of free agency, those first couple of days. Everybody kind of forgets that, and I'm trying to think who's really big on this. Chris Ballard's really big on this in Indianapolis. You build your team throughout the entire year. And everybody puts so much focus on the beginning of free agency and maybe the first 2 rounds of the draft. I mean, you look at James Bradbury, that wasn't day 1 of free agency. You know what I mean? Right. They took their time figuring out, like, Hassan Reddick's a good fit. I just think they went about it in a variety of ways. And that's usually when you have pretty good success, when you don't reach too much. And we can get into it. I don't think the A.J. Brown contract is a reach. I don't think the trade for him is a reach. I look at the way, you know, and everybody in Philly kind of knows him, the way Brett Veach built that offensive line 2 years ago in Kansas City. Like, they had one free agent guy they wanted to go after in Joe Tooney. They went through a trade to get Orlando Brown, and then they draft 2 other guys. My dog's going crazy.
What's your dog's name?
Right, Hank the Tank, who's like a 110-pound chocolate lab, is just
Hank
going
the Tank.
bonkers
Yeah,
right
let's see.
now.
We got to see Hank.
Yeah, Hank, come here. Let's see if we can like move this camera to see Hank. There's a tail.
I see the drum.
Yeah, the drums are here. Yeah.
Hey, James, don't worry about it because Barrett lets his little Fifi walk across the screen on top of his desk. So
yeah, he's
don't
got
worry
like
about
a Paris Hilton kind of dog.
Let me get Hank out. I think my wife came home and like Hank's like going crazy.
Wild. All right.
And so I think guys, when you look at the way you build your team, and I'm always fascinated by how guys do it in the offseason. I think this offseason's been really good so far, and I don't think they're done. I don't think like certain guys like Howie, you know, it's their strength when they come from that side as opposed to the scouting side, that they're always on the phone. You know what I mean? They're always looking. Yeah. And I think that's a strength of Howie's. And I think that's the strength of having the mindset that your off season's never finished. And I love what they've done. I love some of the patience that they've had. I love that Howie was aggressive at times, and at the times it was too much and didn't want to pull the trigger. And so I think the way he went about it and the pieces that they put in place, we can break down this defense. Like, I don't know if Jonathan Gannon will be back there after this season because of how much the league loves him as a potential head coach, but he's got everything at his fingertips right now to make this defense play pretty well, actually.
But Jay, I'm glad you brought up his name, and I don't get it because after one season, he gets all these interviews, and I keep hearing his name as a hot commodity as a head coach. Why? I mean, I understand he was he was deficient of talent with the Eagles. Maybe he couldn't do a lot of things he wanted to do with his defensive scheme. But why? Why did his name rise from the ashes all of a sudden within the year?
That's a really good point. And so what I've been told is, and like the way Rob introduced me and spending, I think, 8 days in Philly leading into the draft and through the draft, anybody I talked to in the building that would I was like living in that hut when nobody else was there. I was just upstairs alone for hours on end. So people would come in and maybe they felt bad for me in the organization and say hello because I'm there from like morning to night. But like everybody I talked to was like, it's just a no-brainer. Like people not even like in the football meat of it with the organization are like, this guy's a head coach. Like it's the way he carries himself, the way he connects with people, the energy he brings, kind of the forward-thinking vibe that he has. It's almost like, and I don't want to say they couldn't explain it. They did explain it pretty well, but it's just a no-brainer to everybody I talked to in the building was like, yeah, like as how he put it, like we're renting him. Like they all believe that this guy is somebody that is a future head coach. And I know because he did interview in Denver and Houston, 2 places I know pretty well.
Right.
He interviewed really, really well. And he came across really well in his interviews. I think the job he did with the defense, and that's why I mentioned it, because I'm excited to see what happens this year. This was a group in the beginning of the year. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, like I think Fletcher was even coming out kind of being like, I don't know, man. Guys are kind of, and then he kind of just stuck with it. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a boring scheme to watch and the way they play in that passive style. But if it works, it works. And I know the schedule was easier in the second half for sure. but they definitely got better. And everybody just loves, I don't know, they just love his vibe. It's I haven't spent a whole ton of time with him. I'm excited to hopefully this season, and like I mentioned during camp, but he is no doubt one of the top names that's going to be out there in this hiring season.
Wow.
Yeah, I love how they drafted too, man. You know, when you look at it, everybody that they brought in as far as free agent draft fits that 3 down, either 30 or 50 front. You know, I mean, for them to go out and get, you know, Hassan Reddick, but then go out and get Kyron Johnson from KU, who's essentially Hassan Reddick just getting to the league. You know, this guy can rush the pass. He played a down lineman at times, also played linebacker at times. He fits that scheme perfectly. Now you have a nose right over the top of the center in Davis. You know, I think it's going to be more so a 30 front or a 50 front as opposed to 4 down again. And you have athletes like BG, guys like that who rush past from the outside. How is he going to incorporate those guys in the system?
I've been told he's gonna mix it up a lot. Like, you're gonna see different fronts. You're gonna see times where it's gonna be Hargraves, Fletcher, and Jordan Davis all on the field at the same time. Like, there's gonna be different things they're gonna play around with. And I think kind of I want to mention the point that you made with that, like, you know, you got a Hassan Reddick coming into the league. I think all the teams I go to and see all these guys come into the league, and so many of them are talented, I think the situation you fall into is so important for your NFL career. You look at Jordan Davis falling into an environment where he has Hargraves and Cox to sit there and learn from. You look at Cam Jurgens to sit there and learn from Kelsey. Like, I think the Eagles did a great job, not just finding, like, you know, what worked for what they want to do and in the draft and the players that they brought in, but so much of it is the environment that you fall into, right? Like, Brad, think at the beginning of your career, like, who's there for me to get me through these first couple of years, teach me how to be a pro, teach me how to be that guy. It's so funny when certain guys that you think are going to have great success in this league and come into an environment that doesn't have that, they'll either struggle quickly or you don't see the player that we all thought they were going to be. Like, I think that's a really big part if you look at the way the Eagles drafted. And I think that's being overlooked a little bit for the situation that some of these guys are coming in.
Not the offensive line, because you see that offensive line in Philly that they keep running them through. Stoutland has those guys because they have people there.
Yeah, and he's one of the best coaches in the league, man. He really
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, fortunately, I don't think he wants to be a head coach, so let's hope it stays that way. Or a coordinator.
It's like Bill Belichick being like, Dante Starnicchia, just stay here forever, please.
Right.
Like, and that's what happened. Yeah,
very good comp. James is also a perfect guy to talk to because he's got the, you know, one eye on the national scene, but he's a Philly guy, so he knows what's going on with the Eagles. What's your sense here, James, in general? We're looking at free agents, draft, and all that, kind of where they are right now. When you're looking at the NFC East, we know the Cowboys won 12 games last year. I think Washington a lot is contingent upon what you get out of Carson Wentz, and there's always a lot going on around Washington. And then there's the Giants kind of rebuilding this thing with Dable. What's your sense of the NFC East?
Yeah, we'll just mention the Giants first. This is a rebuild. I think the world of Brian Dable. I like Mike Kafka a lot. I think he's been waiting for his turn. He'd been kind of blocked in Kansas City for a while. It's interesting to see what they're going to do with Daniel Jones, but that's not a contender for the NFC East by any means. I think this is the most talent Carson Wentz has probably had around him in a long time. I mean, if you look at what Washington has, and I love Terry McLaurin. If you use Curtis Samuel properly, like you saw a little bit in Carolina, he's like a Swiss Army knife. That's pretty difficult to cover. And then like J.D. McKissick and you have like 3 backs that you can give the football to. Like, they got pieces around him, I think. And that's why I think this might be like the last chance for Carson, because this is a decent group of skill guys that are around him. I think Washington's going to be pretty decent. I think the Eagles are the best team in the division, mainly because with Dallas obviously is their number one competition. I don't know how you lose Amari Cooper and get better. Like, I'm not sure how that makes your team better. Everybody's saying, like, you know, CeeDee Lamb's going to step up into that role, and maybe he will, but I just think Amari's a really good player to lose. I think the offensive line's got health questions, depth questions. I think that's a spot where the Eagles are hands down, you know, the best team in the division in terms of their offensive line. I think the Eagles should win the division. And when you look at the NFC, I mean, like, I think Green Bay is obviously up there. Tampa's up there. I think New Orleans, if Jameis plays well, is going to be a really good team. I mean, you have really good pass catchers around him with one of the better defenses in football, with Tyrann Mathieu then joining that group, with Demario Davis, who I think is so underrated, entire that defense. So I think you could put him in that group that if Jalen, and we can break his offseason down, if he takes a big step, this is one of the better teams on paper right now. And if Jalen takes a step, could be during the season one of the better teams in the NFC.
Yeah, the interesting thing about New Orleans, I'll get back to the Eagles in a second, but is they kept the continuity too with Dennis Allen there.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's a big difference with Sean Payton not being there. I get it. They're like Washington in a sense that they are really talented, man. And you know, well, I guess you could say it's about every team. If the quarterback steps up, they're going to be tough. It's weird. The NFC's got a lot of good teams, but I don't know. It feels like the dominance is on the other side in the AFC. Like it's doable. This conference is very doable in general, but. Well, we've talked a lot about Jalen Hurts, and Gunner caused a little firestorm last week that we've been talking about quite a bit. He's a troublemaker. You know that, James.
Yeah, he's like Woody Woodpecker. He's an instigator.
He is an instigator. He's like Woody Woodpecker. I'm going to use that. What's your vibe here? Just what your eyeballs are telling you, what you're hearing, you know, as with him going into this season.
I'll be honest, Rob, it's changed in my perspective. I did Jalen's pro day at Oklahoma, and I was there, and there were plenty of NFL people that attended that pro day that were like, I mean, not wowed at the pro day by any means. And there were plenty of guys I talked to that were like, quarterback evaluators that I trust in the league were like, I don't see it. I don't see it. The people in the Eagles building, I don't know if they're blinded by the way Jalen carries himself or they're genuinely seeing it, but I'd like your guys' opinion. I think they wholeheartedly believe he has the ability to be the guy. Whether they're just telling us that, but I think they do believe that. And I think it's for a couple of reasons. One, his work ethic is ridiculous. And the way he carries himself is remarkable as a leader. Lane Johnson was on with us on NFL Network last week, just raving about the way Jalen carries himself. And all that stuff is true. And I talked to plenty of people at Oklahoma that were feeling the same way. I think they look at the strides he made from the beginning of the season to the end of the season going, if he works like this and he has growth like this again, this is something that we may really have here. And mainly because also, like, he's never had the same guy calling plays in the same offense since high school and back-to-back years. So, like, you look at guys that have had that continuity. I don't know if we see the same Josh Allen right now if he didn't have Brian Daboll right there with him throughout his entire career. I remember, it was right up the road, and John Elway didn't even attend his pro day. The Broncos sent one person to Wyoming. It's a drive for them.
Is that right?
Had to fly. Broncos sent the area scout to Josh Allen's pro day. That's it. The guy who's there with him and already knows him. Which is funny.
With all the quarterback issues they've had, they
were picking 5.
That's crazy.
They were picking 5 at that year.
I didn't know that.
They didn't even go. And so my point is, like, if you have, you know, ability, and Jalen definitely has ability, and you get put in a situation that breeds for success, and you have the work ethic, because Brandon Beans told me a number of times, listen, it was the situation, it was Brian, but it was mostly Josh that put in the work to get to where he's at. And Jalen has that. Everything I've been told this offseason is the accuracy has taken a step forward with the improved footwork, the improved release that he's been doing this offseason, that he's been working on in California. And I just think the two things that everybody's curious about are the accuracy and the decision-making. We know he can create. We know he has arm strength. I think the decision-making is something that if you listen to him talk, Nick Sirianni seems a little bit patient with. Like, he thinks it will come in time. He's a big proponent of the more you see it, the more you're in it, the better your decision-making is going to get. There is that thought, and there is plenty of people in the league that are like, either you can kind of do it or you can't. You either process quickly or you don't process quickly. You can speed it up a little bit. But I think they really think a lot of Jalen Hurts, and I think the A.J. Brown move with a great offensive line, I think his 3 pass catchers could be in the top half of – I mean, like, let's go through it. Like I look at the Raiders and go, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, and Devontae Adams. That's just
nasty.
Right, as your 3 pass catchers. You look at A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams in his second year, who almost had 1,000 yards his rookie season, and Dallas Goedert, who, if you talk to the right people, they'll be like, he's one of the best tight ends in football. Nobody has noticed. And Zach had a big thing to do with that, obviously, in the first part. That's a really good group of three to have that play the position differently too, which everybody talks about. You have this basketball team at the receiver position. That's a phase that's thrown around a lot. Those guys are all built differently. They can impact the defense at different levels. I think he's set up to succeed. And I think Howie's done a really great job of going, we're going to find out this year if he's the guy or not. Because if he's the guy, great. If he's not, we didn't give up our first-round picks next year either.
Yep.
You like Steichen, though? I mean, Steichen took over, play calling duties. They say halfway through the season, and halfway just happened to be the time when they start running the ball and start personalizing the offense around the people he has inside the offensive meeting rooms. Do you think Steichen takes a step forward also?
I think you always take a step forward, Bear, when you know your quarterback. And I think they got a chance to know their quarterback. Like if you look at the first half of the year when they were throwing a little bit more, a lot more, he was like towards the bottom of the league and everything. I think it makes him a better passer once they figured out how to run the football and focus on the run. And then I think they had a better understanding of how Jalen works. And then I think that always makes your offense better. That's why we're always talking about the continuity factor. And the more years you're in the same system, more years of the same play caller, obviously you know the system really well, but they know what makes you work really, really well. And it seems like they found that out. It's a small sample size, but I feel like they found that out a little bit. And I think we're going to find that out probably in the early portion of this year, whether they're growing on that or they didn't find exactly what they were looking at.
This Eagles organization is doing exactly what you're supposed to do when it comes to a quarterback that entails a lot of question marks around it. They're rallying around him, and rightfully so. They're giving him every opportunity to succeed. They've improved the product around him in general. But the word if, which is a very simple word, can sometimes be the biggest word in a dictionary. And there's a lot of ifs surrounding Jalen Hurts right now. Yep. We've seen a small sample of what he can and cannot do, or what we think he can and cannot do. Now the stage is on him. He is prime as center at the forefront of the stage for this organization in 2022. We've talked about it. You just mentioned it. For 24 years of age, he handles himself well beyond his years in terms of poise, calmness. He's like a consummate poker player. You don't know really what he's thinking. You can't get under his skin. He's put in the work, and he will continue to put in the work. Now we will find out, not in training camp, not in preseason games, but when the bullets fly for real, if all of this effort pays off. That's the only true test, the true measuring stick we're going to have is when the bullets start flying for real.
Yep.
When everybody starts playing games against him defensively, if he's got that it factor. So we can sit here and speculate all we want. I've done it. We all do it. We can speculate the pros and cons all we want. But we're not going to find out until we get a full 17-game sample in 2022.
For sure. I totally agree with you. And that's why the Eagles are in – I was at a family function yesterday, and I was talking to my mother-in-law about it, going like, it's such a difficult world if you don't have one of those 10 best quarterbacks. ESPN came out with it today. If you don't have one of those 10 top quarterbacks, it's actually a tougher sled if you're in the middle of the pack than if you're at the bottom. Because if you're at the bottom, you need a new quarterback. If you're in that, if you're Cincinnati and you have Andy Dalton for all those years, you're like, well, Andy's good. But, I know he's probably not going to win as the Super Bowl. But if we get rid of him, I don't know who we're going to get that we know is better. And that's such a tough spot to be in, because I do think for his whole career, however it goes, Jalen is going to be considered as a guy, whether in his future he is a superstar, and that's possible, a franchise quarterback, or a backup. There's always going to be the thought that Jalen Hurts can win me some football games. And I think that's always going to be the case. Even if his career goes sideways and he's a backup, I think he's going to be a valuable player to have on your roster because he's going to win you 5 games if your starter's out. And so it's kind of a weird spot to be in if you're the Eagles. He's always going to give you a chance to win. He'll break down, he'll run. And, I looked at a stat that we were given. There were 3 quarterbacks last year that had 40 or more completions over 20 yards and 20 runs of 10 or more yards. It was Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts. That's it.
Yeah.
He'll find ways to be successful is my point, but is he that guy? That's going to be a really tough evaluation, because in this conversation I was having with my mother, I was like, nobody is patient, specifically in the NFL.
By the way, I love that your mother-in-law is what's like.
Dude, she's the biggest like football fan.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, monster football fan.
Yeah.
She's breaking all this. She was like grilling me that if they didn't fire Vic Fangio in Denver, would they have been able to get Russell Wilson?
Wow.
And I was like, wow, that's a really interesting way to look at it.
Okay,
Mama
interesting.
Hot.
Yeah.
And so like that's the point of it. Like he's gonna win you games. Can you be patient enough that if that spot is there? Like we've kind of talked about Josh Allen a lot in this. Like I remember Brandon Beane telling me like nobody in America is patient, nobody in the NFL is patient.
Right.
Coolers were extremely patient with us and Josh and letting this thing grow. And look what's happened. I mean, right now, if you go to Vegas, he's the odds-on favorite to win the MVP when he completed like 50% of his passes his rookie year. Like, do you do that with Jalen if you see it? You got to see it, though. And that's not my job, thankfully, because Howie has to make that decision on whether they do see it happening each year. If they see a big step this year, I would stick with them, wouldn't you? Like, I mean,
absolutely.
And you're sitting there with 2 first-round picks you could use on other areas to help yourself.
Absolutely.
That $40 million price tag sitting right there, James.
Yep.
When you got that $40 million that's just right there, you can't make all the moves that they just made. They made all the moves because they have a rookie a rookie contract that they're working with. So
yeah, you look at what they built around Russ. Like, what was in Seattle around Russell Wilson on that rookie
Legion
deal?
of Boom. Yep.
And I think there's similarities by the way they play. If you look at the early portion of Russ's career, like he would take off for those 10 yards and get out of bounds and always be dangerous with his legs. And they both throw a pretty good deep ball. Actually, I think Russ's deep ball is ridiculous, but they both throw a good deep ball. And if you got a great group around them with that salary, you can make some moves. And then they've started doing that. And if this turns out to be, legit, they're gonna be a scary team.
Hey James, on a national platform, how do you think this Deshaun Watson fiasco plays out?
Yeah, good word, Gunnar. Fiasco is right. It's today is the 11th. Today is the earliest we may hear. I don't think it's going to happen today, but we may hear what Sue Robinson thinks. Here's the deal: as long as it's not no punishment, which none of us are assuming he's going to get nothing, both parties can appeal. So
you're almost in camp. We're in camp in a week plus.
Exactly. And so, I mean, keep your eye. They've talked to the Niners. The Browns have talked to the 49ers about Jimmy Garoppolo.
Whoa.
If it's a full-year suspension, maybe those conversations go further because they like the idea of Jacoby Brissett on like a 10-game or under suspension. And I'd say 2 months ago in league circles, it was probably a 10-game suspension. We know that the league is pushing for a full year and then reevaluate. I find it interesting that a lot of stuff is leaked out. A thought would be that stuff is leaking out because the league is not happy with the direction that Sue Robinson is leaning. So we might as well get information out there that is like, we really want a full season suspension. If they were thinking she's going to go full year, why would anything come out? I find that a little bit interesting. But again, whatever the suspension is, both sides have the option to appeal and probably will, unless it's, there's no suspension by any means. It is probably the most fascinating thing we've seen in the NFL for some time. On the football field, he's incredible. Off the field, it has been one thing after another that has just made you really probably never look at him the same again.
Well said. Well said.
You're appealing to the same people, though, man. You're appealing to the same people to give it to you. That's the only thing I've that I've done. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Exactly, Barry. And that's the point. Like, that's a really good thing to bring up because, like, this is the first major case we're hearing in the new CBA where an independent evaluator or moderator or however you want to say it is making the call, right? It was Roger Goodell making the calls on these previous things like, Deflategate and things like that. Well, what are we showing, as a league, if all of a sudden we've switched to this? This is something the NFLPA has agreed upon. This is something the league has agreed upon. She comes up with what she believes is the proper punishment. And then the NFL goes, well, we're going to appeal that. We don't like that. Let's just try to get it back to where we wanted it. Well, it's like, well, then why'd you set this up in the first
right?
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so I think that's why it's a really, really, for the context of it, obviously all eyes are on it, but also for future cases in the league, there's a lot of eyes on it too, on how the league's going to handle things off the field with conduct that's inappropriate to what the league standard is, or however they stated in the CBA.
James, before we let you get you out of here, I got to ask you. I know you're a big Sixers fan.
Mm-hmm.
Harden taking less money. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know if we talked about it last time I was on here. I hope you guys know how I feel about James Harden. I don't think there's anything left in the tank. I didn't like him when I was in Houston. I don't like his style of basketball. I was lied to in the first couple of weeks he arrived to the Sixers as this distributor.
How do you really feel?
So I mean, I did not watch any more of the playoffs after the Sixers were eliminated. I was devastated.
Wow.
I don't know. It was like I'm trying to compare, because it's happened in other sports where it's like a desperate reach, and then you get the guy and you go, ugh. I was like when Chris Webber came. Remember?
Yeah. Oh yes. Oh my goodness.
Iverson finally has some help, and then we're
goodness.
like, oh, we got a shell of Chris Webber.
Yeah.
And you can line up like 5 of the guys that try to put with AI.
Oh, there was Matt Harpering. I mean, we could go on and on and on, man.
Forever.
It was bad. Yeah,
forever.
Was bad.
So yeah, I mean, like, listen, we need better pieces. Obviously, Matisse didn't. I thought he was going to take a step this year.
Yeah.
From what I saw what I saw last year, I didn't really
stepped
see
the
it
wrong way, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know.
No, you keeping it real. You're not.
Yeah,
I'm
keeping it real. I'm keeping it really upset. Is what I'm keeping it. Yeah.
All right, James. So so not this week, but next, right? We'll catch you hosting
Good Morning Football Week.
Okay.
Yeah, and we just announced our new permanent host today of Good Morning Football, replacing Kay Adams, Jamie Erdahl,
right?
Yeah,
Jamie Erdahl.
Just announced today.
Where's Kane going?
We can talk afterwards, Gunner.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Okay. Yeah, he knows.
He knows.
Left,
yeah. Check out James on Twitter at James Palmer TV. Of course, the NFL Network, and then coming up a week from today on Good Morning Football, which is a phenomenal show. Love that show. So looking forward to it. James, we appreciate it, man. It's always fun talking.
Always.
Yeah, guys, love it. And I'll be on all week. Garofolo is going to be on with me too. So they got 2 Philly guys that are like going to have to hold back their Phillies talk like they can on that show.
I like it. And James, listen, man, all the best. Thanks for taking
you guys too, man. Love chatting with you.
All right,
Thank you, man.
care.
Good.
It's James Palmer, James Philly guy. You know, his dad Scott was with Channel 6 forever, and then of course he does an unbelievable job with the Phillies as well. James, an all-around good dude, man. All right, let's get a quick timeout, guys. We'll get caught back up. We're gonna keep rolling with the Eagles and discuss the really tricky parts of their schedule. There's 2 stretches in particular that are really challenging for this schedule, which we'll dive into when we get back. Don't go anywhere. Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks. I'm Rob Ellis. We're Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. All right, I am thrilled to let you know about a new sponsor to the program, and that is Razor Technology. Now, here's the deal. You know this. In the middle of an emergency, it is not the right time. In fact, it's the wrong time to wonder who is in charge and how to respond. Restoring malfunctioning systems, rebooting complex servers, reconfiguring applications, bringing back up online, and reauthorizing users all takes a lot of time. And the longer it takes, the more damage that a business can be exposed to. Razor Technology helps growing businesses develop a disaster recovery plan that protects all their essential data. Razor ensures all your critical systems are backed up and that backups are regularly checked to ensure that they can be deployed at a moment's notice. Depend on Razor Technology, your trusted IT managed service provider, to save time and money on your IT and cloud services. Find out if your business is built to recover from a data disaster by calling Razor Technology today, 866-797-3282. That's 866-797-3282, or visit them online at razor-tech.com. That is razor-tech.com.